Joining me now is Rafe Heydel-Mankoo, historian, broadcaster, and senior fellow at the New Culture Forum. Rafe, thank you for joining me.
Great pleasure to be with you.
Super. I don't think the St. George's flag is racist. I think some people who are racist have adopted the flag and use it for their own means, but I don't look at that flag and think it's racist. Do you?
I don't, and actually 3/4 of the British population agree with us, which is very reassuring to see. But of course, the stats divide very starkly, with 91% of Conservative voters agreeing with us, but a much smaller percentage of Labour voters agreeing with us on that. But there's nothing really new here, you know. I mean, people always have said that the far right have, or just the right have hijacked nationalism. The right haven't hijacked nationalism. The problem has been that the left hates the nation state, they hate borders, and they hate nationalism because they're internationalist. And so they have failed to actually celebrate their own version of pride in England. And they've got every reason to be proud of England, you know, from the Chartists and the Levellers, you know, that the history of the left in England is something worth celebrating. And previous generations understood that. Tony Benn, you know, Clement Attlee, these characters, even Billy Bragg on the left. But the modern left today want everybody to celebrate their identity, their culture, and their heritage, with one exception, and that's England and the English. Nobody complains when the Scots and the Welsh wave their flags with great gusto. When they do it, it's called progressive nationalism. But when we do it in England, it's called racism.
Rafe, would it be easier or better if just out in the US you have the Confederate flag? It's quite controversial, of course, but the Confederate flag is associated with a certain group of Americans who want things a certain way. Do we need to give our far-right racists a slightly different version of the St. George flag so they can be identified purely as that and we can keep our flag for ourselves?
Well, that's a very interesting notion. I've not had that proposed before. But look, the point is, the English flag is seen flying in every little country churchyard. If you go into the Cotswolds or the Lake District, you'll see the St. George's Cross flying above churches. You know, we're seeing now, in 1966 at the World Cup, when England was playing, there was a sea of Union flags. Today, there are seas of St. George's crosses. We have already reclaimed the St. George's Cross from the far right. In just the same way, in the 1980s and 90s, we reclaimed the Union flag from the National Front, for example. And you see now people draped in the Union flag when they are at the Olympics. And you'll see the same sort of thing at the Commonwealth Games with the St. George's Cross. So I don't think, actually, I think there's a bit of a straw man that this is somehow a far-right symbol these days. You know, the Emily Thornberrys of this world want it to be still cast as such. But I think, in partly because of devolution, English people, for once, are beginning to actually assert themselves as being English first. Traditionally, the English always said they were British first and English second, which is the opposite to what the Welsh and the Scots did. Now, for the first time, the English are saying that they're English first.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the Union flag. Keir Starmer is you know, trying to take back the St. George. But if he's going to be in charge of the whole country, it should really be the Union flag that he's pushing, right? For unity across the whole country, not just trying to say, yes, St. George, we're patriotic. If you're patriotic in this country, well, that's the whole nation, not just one small country.
Sure. Well, he's doing both, right? So if you look at all the Labour conferences, the Labour material, he's actually stoked ire from some of his backbenchers and others because the Union flag is so prominently placed. But he knows very well that he needs to win back the red wall in England. And one of the reasons that so many deserted Jeremy Corbyn is because Labour Party voters in the red wall are small c conservative. They've always had a love of nation and a love of country. And that's why you've got this tension now in British politics, because I would say the majority or a far larger number of Labour MPs and the left who run our institutions do hate this idea of English nationalism, and they're completely out of kilter with the views of many potential Labour voters. And Keir Starmer knows that, and that's why he's trying to address it. And it's ever been thus. You know, George Orwell famously said that English intellectuals are perhaps the intellectuals of no other great country has intellectuals that are so ashamed of their nation, and they would rather be caught stealing from a church poor box than be seen standing to God Save the King. So there's nothing really new here.
Rafe Heydel-Mankoo, thank you for your time, sir.
A pleasure.